Most wealthy women of the Gilded Age collected art, jewellery, or charitable causes. Theresa Fair Oelrichs collected something far more complex and ultimately more destructive: absolute control over every detail of her manufactured paradise. Her obsessions began reasonably enough with mansion blueprints and party planning, but evolved into a consuming need to micromanage reality itself until every surface, every guest, every moment bent to her increasingly impossible standards. She approached social supremacy like an engineer, mapping out human relationships with the same precision her father had used to extract precious metals from stubborn Nevada rock. The results were spectacular: parties that became American legends, a palace that redefined luxury, and a reputation that made grown millionaires tremble over seating arrangements. But the same relentless drive that built her empire also guaranteed its destruction, as perfectionism transformed from asset into addiction, control from strategy into compulsion. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Allure, we witness the ultimate cautionary tale about American ambition, where getting everything you want proves far more destructive than never getting it at all. Theresa Alice Fair emerged from the gritty boomtown of Virginia City, Nevada, on June 30th, 1871, born into a world where fortunes were ripped from the earth and squandered just as quickly. Her father, James Graham Fair, known to friends and enemies alike as Slippery Jim, had arrived from County Tyrone, Ireland, at age 12, with nothing but hunger in his belly and schemes in his head. By 1873, Fair and 3 fellow Irishmen struck what became known as the Big Bonanza, the largest single deposit of gold and silver ever discovered in American history, worth over $100 million, roughly $3.8 billion in today's currency. The Comstock lode transformed Fair from a penniless prospector into one of the legendary Bonanza kings, but wealth corroded his character faster than Nevada alkali ate through mining equipment. Contemporary accounts painted him as mean-spirited and vindictive, a man who caught miners taking smoke breaks, joined them to puff his pipe underground in violation of safety rules, then fired them at shift's end for breaking the very regulations he'd flouted. His wife, Theresa Rooney Fair, a former boarding house operator who'd married him during his lean years, endured his drinking and serial adultery until 1883, when she filed for divorce, citing habitual adultery. The divorce became a national scandal, with Mrs. Fair securing a $5 million settlement, the largest in American history, plus custody of daughters Tessie and Virginia Birdie. While James kept their sons, young Tessie watched her family explode in the most public way possible, learning early that money could buy everything except discretion. After the divorce, mother and daughters abandoned Nevada's dusty mining camps for San Francisco's marble mansions and Newport's exclusive summer colony, where Tessie observed the rigid hierarchies governing America's emerging aristocracy. She spent her teenage years studying the elaborate protocols of social warfare that characterized high society, preparing for her own campaign of conquest. In 1889, while playing tennis at Newport's prestigious casino, 18-year-old Tessie met Herman Oelrichs, a prize catch at nearly 40, Yale-educated, from an established Baltimore family and American agent for the Norddeutsche Lloyd steamship line. Their courtship represented a calculated merger of new money seeking old prestige, with Oelrichs offering the social connections Tessie's millions couldn't buy outright. The wedding on June 3, 1890 in San Francisco was a spectacular affair, marred by one telling absence. James Fair wasn't invited, as Tessie feared he'd appear drunk and embarrass everyone. Nevertheless, Slippery Jim demonstrated either generosity or guilt by presenting the couple with $1 million, approximately $35 million today, as a wedding gift. The newlyweds established themselves in a mansion at 1 East 57th Street, at the corner of Fifth Avenue, which they purchased and improved with $150,000 in renovations. But Tessie's real ambitions lay in Newport, where America's wealthiest families competed in architectural one-upmanship and social warfare conducted with invitation lists and seating charts. In 1891, she and Birdie purchased 11 acres of oceanfront property from historian George Bancroft, who'd cultivated magnificent rose gardens that gave the estate its name, Rosecliff. Tessie had learned from her father that half measures were for losers. She would build a palace that would force Newport society to acknowledge her supremacy. The mining camp girl was about to show the Eastern establishment what Western money could accomplish when combined with ruthless ambition and an absolute refusal to be ignored, starting with a commission for Stanford White that would end in murder. Theresa Fair Oelrichs didn't believe in waiting for anything, least of all social acceptance. So when she commissioned Stanford White to design her Newport cottage, she demanded nothing less than an American Versailles. White, simultaneously creating palaces for other industrial titans, drew inspiration from the Grand Trianon, the garden retreat where French royalty had escaped the suffocating protocols of court life, though Tessie intended her mansion for exactly the opposite purpose. The H-shaped mansion that rose from 1899 to 1902 cost $2.5 million, $91 million in today's currency, and sprawled across 28,800 square feet of calculated magnificence. At its heart lay Newport's largest private ballroom, a breathtaking space measuring 40 by 80 feet, with ceilings soaring toward elaborate murals that depicted scenes of aristocratic leisure Tessie had never experienced in Nevada's mining camps. So impatient was she to establish dominance that she began hosting parties in the unfinished ballroom, forcing Newport's elite to navigate construction debris to attend her soirees. The mansion's 30 rooms included a reception salon modelled after Versailles' Salon Doré, complete with carved musical instruments representing the arts. Tessie was determined to patronise into submission. Every detail screamed wealth and sophistication: hand-carved mouldings, cornerstone facades, a heart-shaped staircase engineered specifically for dramatic entrances, and windows offering panoramic ocean views. But Tessie's true genius lay not in architecture, but in social engineering, demonstrated when she manoeuvred her way into the triumvirate that succeeded Caroline Astor as arbiters of American society. This powerful alliance included Mamie Fish, known for her unconventional wit, and Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, famous for architectural extravagance and fierce determination. But Tessie carved out her own role. While Alva threw lavish costume balls and Mamie hosted raucous dinners featuring trained seals and baby elephants, Tessie became what her niece Blanche called the drill sergeant of high society. She was strongly addicted to society as business, treating social prominence with the same ruthless focus her father had applied to extracting silver from stubborn Nevada ore. The triumvirate controlled access to America's elite with invitation lists that could make or break fortunes, determining who would be welcomed into Newport's marble halls and who would be forever banished. Tessie's approach was methodical and merciless. She kept detailed records on every potential guest, categorizing them as suitable or unsuitable with the same precision she applied to rating servants. Her daily routine reflected this obsession with control. Every morning, at precisely 9 o'clock, she conducted military-style inspections of Rosecliff, examining every surface for dust or disorder. The servants dreaded these inspections, knowing that Tessie would personally scrub marble floors if they didn't meet her impossible standards, an obsession that eventually cost her sight in one eye when a carpet tack flew up during one of her cleaning frenzies. She classified her staff in written records as good, bad, or rotten, maintaining files that would make a corporate human resources department envious. This level of micromanagement extended to her own body, which she subjected to torturous regimens of starvation and exercise until she fainted, spending thousands on the latest fitness equipment. Most disturbing was her corset ritual. She required her strongest servants to lace her so tightly that she gripped chairs to endure the process. A shocking breach of etiquette she dismissed with aristocratic indifference. Yet despite these controlling tendencies, or perhaps because of them, Tessie succeeded in her ultimate goal, forcing Newport society to orbit around her like planets around a particularly demanding sun. By 1900, no social season was complete without multiple appearances at Rosecliff, where Tessie held court in rooms that proclaimed her transformation from mining heiress to social monarch. But her greatest triumph would require her to literally paint Newport white. Tessie Fair Oelrichs reached the pinnacle of her social reign with the Bal Blanc of August 1904, an all-white extravaganza that would become the most legendary party of the Gilded Age. The event, timed to coincide with the prestigious Astor Cup race, required months of planning and expenditure that would have funded a small city's annual budget. Every surface at Rosecliff disappeared under banks of white flowers, hydrangeas, roses, orchids and lilies of the valley, creating an ethereal wonderland that transformed the mansion into a dream made manifest. She imported white swans to glide across the estate's fountain and commissioned the construction of 12 full-sized white ships with illuminated hulls, anchored offshore to create the illusion of a ghostly fleet. All guests received strict instructions to dress entirely in white, including powdering their hair, with women wearing white silk gowns embroidered with silver thread and diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. The effect was otherworldly. Contemporary accounts described white-clad figures moving through flower-filled rooms like spirits in an enchanted palace, while the ocean beyond glowed with the phantom ships. Newport had seen elaborate parties before, but nothing approaching this level of theatrical perfection, this absolute commitment to transforming reality into fantasy through sheer force of will and unlimited funds. The Bal Blanc represented not just a party, but a declaration of supremacy. Tessie's announcement that she had conquered the social territory her father had only dreamed of entering. But this legendary event was merely one highlight in Tessie's relentless campaign of entertainment designed to cement her position as Newport's premier hostess. She hosted elaborate fairy tale-themed dinners where guests arrived dressed as characters from children's stories, transforming Rosecliff into an adult playground of make-believe. Her coup de théâtre came when she engaged Harry Houdini himself to perform at one of her gatherings, bringing the world's most famous escape artist to entertain her exclusive circle. The ballroom that had hosted white-powdered aristocrats also witnessed ballet performances, opera presentations, and circus acts, each event calculated to outshine whatever her rivals might attempt. When not in use for grand entertainments, she allowed the ballroom to serve as a roller skating rink, a detail that perfectly captured her mix of aristocratic pretension and American practicality. Yet beneath this glittering surface, cracks were appearing in Tessie's carefully constructed facade, manifested in increasingly obsessive behaviours that worried even her indulgent social circle. Her body image fixations had progressed from concerning to dangerous. She would starve herself for days, exercise until she collapsed, and demand her corsets be tightened until she could barely breathe. The cleaning obsessions grew more pronounced, with Tessie sometimes spending entire nights scrubbing floors that servants had already cleaned, convinced they harboured invisible contamination. She began exhibiting paranoid behaviours about money, distrusting even long-time servants, and keeping elaborate records of every penny spent, despite possessing wealth that made such accounting absurd. These compulsions existed alongside her public persona of the gracious hostess, creating a jarring disconnect between the woman who orchestrated magical entertainments and the one who scrubbed floors at midnight. Her marriage to Herman had devolved into open warfare, with the couple arguing viciously in front of guests and living essentially separate lives connected only by legal documents. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake struck, Tessie saw a potential opportunity for reconciliation, planning an elaborate dinner to celebrate Herman's survival. But Herman never appeared for the reconciliation dinner, delivering a final rebuke that made clear their marriage existed only on paper, a business arrangement gone sour. The contrast between Tessie's public triumphs and private torments grew starker with each passing season, the gulf between appearance and reality widening like cracks in Rosecliff's marble facades. Cracks that would split wide open when Herman died at sea, leaving behind a will that would shake Newport society to its foundations. Hermann Oelrichs died on September 1st, 1906, aboard the SS Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse, while crossing the Atlantic, delivering one final insult from beyond the grave through his carefully crafted will. In a gesture of posthumous spite, he left his entire estate to his brother Charles, assuming Tessie's inherited millions were sufficient for her needs, an assumption she furiously contested. The ensuing legal battle exposed the couple's marital dysfunction to public scrutiny, revealing years of estrangement and mutual contempt that society columns had carefully ignored. Tessie eventually settled for half of Herman's estate, but the victory felt hollow, secured through lawyers rather than the love she'd never quite managed to purchase. Adding to the period's darkness, Stanford White, the architect who'd built her dream palace, was murdered at Madison Square Garden on June 25, 1906, by millionaire Harry Thor. The killing stemmed from White's sexual assault of Thor's wife, Evelyn Nesbit, when she was just 16, a crime that cast shadows over every building White had designed. For Tessie, the murder forever tainted Rosecliff, linking her monument to social supremacy with one of the era's most sordid scandals. The introduction of federal income tax in 1913 marked the beginning of the end for the lifestyle Tessie had perfected, making such extravagant entertainments financially impossible even for the wealthy. World War I accelerated this decline, rendering ostentatious displays of wealth not just expensive, but unpatriotic, effectively ending the Gilded Age's culture of competitive excess. Tessie, now in her 50s, found herself ruling over an empty kingdom, her skills in social warfare suddenly as obsolete as her father's mining techniques. The rigid hierarchies she'd spent decades mastering crumbled with surprising speed, replaced by a more democratic culture that had no use for her elaborate protocols. As the 1920s progressed, Tessie's mental health deteriorated dramatically, manifesting in behaviours that transformed Rosecliff from palace to asylum. Servants reported finding her in the ballroom at 3 a.m, conducting animated conversations with invisible guests, and setting places for people who existed only in her fracturing mind. She would host elaborate dinner parties for these imaginary companions, moving through the courses and directing phantom servants to attend to guests only she could see. Her niece later wrote that Tessie spent her final years inviting them to stay just a little longer, to take one more glass of champagne, unable to accept that the party had ended. The woman who'd orchestrated the Bal Blanc now wandered through flowerless rooms, her white hair unpowdered, speaking to ghosts of the society she'd conquered and lost. On November 22, 1926, Theresa Fair Oelrichs died at Rosecliff at age 55, her funeral held in the ballroom where she'd once commanded Newport's elite. She was buried at Woodlawn Cemetery beside the husband she'd battled in life, their eternal proximity a final irony in a relationship defined by distance. Her son Herman Jr. inherited Rosecliff but couldn't maintain it, selling the mansion in 1941 for $21,000, less than 1% of what his mother had spent building it. The mansion suffered years of neglect, with burst pipes creating frozen waterfalls on the grand staircase where Tessie had once made her dramatic entrances. In 1971, the restored mansion was donated to the Preservation Society of Newport County, ensuring its survival as a museum to Gilded Age excess. Today, Rosecliff hosts weddings and galas, its ballroom still echoing with music, though the guests no longer powder their hair white or arrive in footman-attended carriages. The mining camp girl who'd conquered Newport society left behind a ghost story made of marble and gilt, a cautionary tale about the price of social supremacy wrapped in the most beautiful architectural package money could buy, a fitting monument to a woman who'd gained everything she'd wanted and discovered it wasn't nearly enough. And now we'd like to see you in the comments below. Did you know about Tessie's transformation from mining camp to Newport royalty? Thank you for watching another episode of Old Money Allure, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.